A catastrophic earthquake in the Pacific Northwest would topple buildings and bridges, not to mention the damage from a tsunami.
The Cascadia Subduction Zone. It's one of the top hazards on the planet.
The United States Geological Survey, USGS, has issued a red alert following the discovery of alarming cracks beneath the Cascadia Subduction Zone, a seismic region known for its immense tectonic volatility. This unprecedented alert has rippled across the scientific and emergency management communities, signaling a potentially dire situation. The Cascadia Subduction Zone, stretching from Northern California to British Columbia, has long been identified as a ticking time bomb of seismic energy. Now, with the discovery of these subsurface fractures, concerns have escalated to a level not seen in decades. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Cracks under a subduction zone are not mere surface irregularities. These are deep structural fissures in the Earth's crust, potentially indicating that the tectonic plates, specifically the Juan de Fuca plate diving beneath the North American plate, are undergoing an abnormal stress response. Typically, the tectonic motion in this region is locked, slowly building pressure over hundreds of years before releasing in massive earthquakes. However, the discovery of cracks might suggest that this pressure is reaching a critical tipping point. It's not just the presence of these cracks that has triggered the red alert, but their rapid expansion and the seismic noise emanating from them. The nature of subduction zones makes them some of the most dangerous geological features on Earth. They are responsible for the most powerful earthquakes in recorded history, and the Cascadia Zone is no exception. Unlike more frequently trembling faults such as the San Andreas, the Cascadia remains eerily quiet for long periods, only to erupt with devastating force. The last known megaquake from this region occurred in 1700 and was powerful enough to send a tsunami across the Pacific, reaching the shores of Japan. For centuries, it was largely forgotten in Western history, until the science of paleoseismology began reconstructing the past from sand layers and sunken forests, proving that the quiet was not peace, but a gathering storm. The discovery of cracks beneath this zone is not merely a geological curiosity. It suggests a fundamental change in the stress regime of the plates. Under normal locked conditions, stress builds gradually and evenly. When cracks begin to form, it implies that the strain is not dispersing uniformly. Instead, it could be focusing along specific paths of weakness, preconditioning the fault to rupture. These cracks, mapped using deep penetration seismic imaging and corroborated with satellite-based interferometry, show a pattern consistent with impending instability. They are not limited to one area, but are distributed across multiple segments of the subduction zone, indicating that a large-scale release could be possible rather than a series of smaller events. A red alert from the USGS is a rare and sobering declaration. It signifies that the threat level has surpassed thresholds where standard monitoring and public information are sufficient. It means that action must be taken, awareness raised, and contingencies considered on a national scale. While the cracks themselves are underground and invisible to the general public, their implications are vast and deeply unsettling. Scientists believe that such cracking could signify the weakening of the frictional interface between the colliding plates. Once that friction drops below a critical level, the plates can slide rapidly and violently, generating a massive earthquake that could last several minutes and devastate vast stretches of the Pacific Northwest. The Cascadia Subduction Zone has always been seen as a potential source of a magnitude 9.0 plus earthquake, followed by a massive tsunami. What makes this new development more concerning is the indication that the zone may be moving from a locked to an unstable state. For decades, the scientific consensus has been that Cascadia is capable of producing the big one, a seismic event of cataclysmic scale. However, the timing of such an event remains speculative. With the presence of newly discovered and expanding cracks, those speculative scenarios begin to transform into plausible forecasts. The red alert does not suggest a quake is imminent within hours or days, but it represents a stark elevation in probability within a near-term frame of years or even months. Subduction zones are complicated by their relative silence. Unlike transform faults, which frequently shudder and release minor quakes that provide data and warnings, a subduction zone like Cascadia might go centuries without much surface expression. But beneath the silence, forces are building. The presence of subsurface cracks is akin to finding hairline fractures in a dam under pressure. It might not be breaking yet, but the structural integrity is compromised. That compromise is what has sparked such intense scrutiny and concern. The implications reach far beyond geology. The potential human toll, economic impact, and infrastructural consequences of a full-scale Cascadia rupture are staggering. Coastal cities such as Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, and smaller towns scattered along the coastlines are particularly vulnerable. Many of these areas are built on soft sediment, which amplifies seismic waves. Buildings constructed before seismic codes were enforced may not withstand prolonged shaking. Furthermore, the possibility of a tsunami following a major quake introduces an additional layer of risk. The cracks discovered beneath the seabed are near the interface where the ocean floor would suddenly lift or fall in a rupture, displacing massive amounts of seawater. This would send walls of water racing toward land within minutes, leaving very little time for evacuation in some regions. The psychological effect of the red alert cannot be understated either. While scientists, engineers, and emergency planners are trained to interpret these developments through technical lenses, the public often reacts with fear, confusion, or inaction. The challenge now lies not only in understanding the scientific significance of these cracks, but also in communicating the urgency without inciting panic. The balance between preparedness and fear is delicate, but the stakes are too high for ambiguity. In light of the red alert, the scientific community has intensified its monitoring efforts. Earthquake early warning systems like Shake Alert are being tested and recalibrated. Deep-sea sensors and GPS stations are feeding back data in near real time, providing more precise measurements of ground deformation and seismic activity. The hope is that should the cracks widen or correlate with foreshocks, there might be precious seconds of warning that can be issued before a major quake. In the context of a subduction zone quake, even 30 seconds could save thousands of lives by enabling shutdowns of pipelines, trains, bridges, and alerting people to seek cover or high ground. From a geophysical standpoint, the discovery of these cracks is a rare opportunity to observe the mechanics of a major fault potentially preparing for failure. It allows seismologists to refine models, validate predictions, and improve the accuracy of simulations that guide urban planning and emergency response. However, it also lays bare how little control humanity has over the primal forces of the Earth. Despite all technological advancements, the deep processes driving tectonic activity remain largely inaccessible and only partially understood. The structural behavior of subduction zones is influenced by complex interactions of temperature, pressure, fluid content, and rock composition. When cracks begin to form, they also act as pathways for fluid migration. Superheated water and gas moving into faults can change their frictional properties dramatically. This process, known as hydrofracturing, can lubricate the fault and trigger slippage. The USGS data indicates that the cracks beneath Cascadia may be experiencing precisely this fluid migration. Such conditions make the fault more dynamic and reactive, increasing the likelihood of an event cascade that leads to rupture. These cracks are not static features. They evolve, expand, and sometimes heal over time. The issue now is their rate of change. Recent readings show measurable expansion, implying that the tectonic system is in flux. Ground deformation data indicates slight but consistent bulging in coastal areas, another telltale sign of accumulating pressure. These findings are eerily reminiscent of what has been observed before other megaquakes around the world, such as the 2004 Indian Ocean quake or the 2011 Tohoku disaster in Japan. In both cases, a sudden slip along a subduction fault released unimaginable energy with devastating consequences. Emergency management agencies are now faced with the monumental task of revising disaster scenarios to account for this new information. Infrastructure vulnerability assessments are being updated. Critical lifelines, hospitals, communication lines, power grids, transportation networks are under review for their resilience. The red alert effectively forces a recalibration of regional risk, prompting urgent investment in retrofitting and contingency planning. It is a grim reminder that nature's clock is ticking, even if the exact moment of detonation is unknown. One of the most chilling implications of the cracks is the potential for a multi-segment rupture. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is divided into segments, and while a rupture in one could be devastating, a cascading failure across all segments could produce one of the most powerful earthquakes in modern history. The interconnected nature of the cracks suggests that energy transfer between segments could be more seamless than previously assumed. Such an event would send shockwaves across thousands of miles, felt not only in the Pacific Northwest but potentially across much of North America. The seismic hazard is compounded by the risk of landslides, soil liquefaction, and volcanic activity. Cascadia sits among a chain of volcanoes known as the Cascades, and a large quake could destabilize some of these structures, triggering secondary disasters. The entire geosystem is delicately balanced, and when one component shifts, the effects ripple outward in often unpredictable ways. The red alert is not merely a warning about an earthquake, it's a declaration that an entire region's equilibrium is under threat. Public education and response readiness are more crucial now than ever. The discovery of cracks beneath Cascadia has elevated the urgency for communities to understand their vulnerability and develop family-level preparedness plans. Schools, businesses, and municipalities must integrate the latest risk assessments into drills, policies, and building codes. The science is clear. While the exact day or hour cannot be predicted, the probability of a major seismic event is increasing. The cracks beneath the surface are not just geological formations. They are warnings etched into the Earth's crust. Scientific teams continue to monitor the evolution of the cracks, using every available tool from drones to underwater robotic vehicles. The challenge is to determine whether this is the beginning of a slow slip event, a precursor to a major quake, or an anomalous episode that might stabilize over time. Regardless of the short-term outcome, the long-term implications are undeniable. Cascadia is changing, and the planet is speaking through its fractures, offering a rare window into the buildup before catastrophe. Preparedness, awareness, and vigilance are the only shields available against the unpredictable wrath of tectonic forces. The cracks beneath the Cascadia Subduction Zone have rewritten the threat landscape and reaffirmed that nature does not operate on human timelines. Whether this warning culminates in a seismic catastrophe or not, the red alert stands as a pivotal moment in the geological narrative of North America. The ground beneath millions has stirred, and the question is no longer if, but when. Beyond the immediate geological implications, the red alert issued due to the discovery of cracks beneath the Cascadia Subduction Zone has profound societal, infrastructural, and environmental ramifications. With the tectonic stress nearing what could be an unsustainable level, it becomes essential to evaluate how such an alert reshapes every layer of regional stability, from transportation and energy networks to food systems, water access, and psychological resilience. One of the most pressing concerns following this revelation is the vulnerability of critical infrastructure that spans the Pacific Northwest. Bridges, highways, tunnels, and rail lines, many of which were built before current seismic standards were established, may not be designed to withstand the violent shaking or ground deformation expected in a large-scale subduction zone rupture. Structures that cross soft soil zones, such as river deltas or reclaimed land near coastal ports, are particularly susceptible to soil liquefaction, where the ground momentarily loses its strength and behaves like a liquid during intense shaking. This alone can topple buildings, sink roads, and sever transportation arteries, isolating entire communities in the immediate aftermath. The energy grid, a vast network of pipelines, electrical lines, and substations, also faces considerable risks. Many transmission lines run through mountainous terrain, which could be subjected to landslides or rockfalls during an earthquake. Natural gas pipelines crossing the fault system may rupture, leading to fires or explosions. Hydroelectric dams in the region, while robust, were not all engineered with a magnitude 9+ seismic event in mind. The discovery of cracks beneath the subduction zone prompts a re-evaluation of these installations' seismic tolerances, especially given that many are located upstream from major population centers. In the realm of communication, seismic events of the scale feared in Cascadia could paralyze digital infrastructure. Cell towers may collapse or lose power. Fiber optic cables could be severed by ground displacement, and satellite uplinks might fail due to interference or structural damage. In a society so heavily reliant on instantaneous communication for emergency coordination, logistics, and information dissemination, even a temporary loss of connectivity can have cascading consequences. Emergency management systems, which often depend on centralized servers and redundant networks, are now being stress tested in simulations to account for widespread infrastructure failures brought on by such a catastrophic scenario. The cracks discovered beneath the ocean floor also raise the specter of tsunamis that would follow a massive subduction quake. Unlike earthquakes, which strike suddenly but offer some early warning through seismic waves, tsunamis move silently and invisibly through deep ocean waters until they rise and break upon the coast. The proximity of these underwater cracks to the trench where seafloor displacement would initiate a tsunami has forced scientists to recalibrate wave height and arrival time predictions. In worst-case simulations, certain coastal towns could be engulfed within 15 minutes of a rupture, hardly enough time for full-scale evacuations. Emergency planners are now racing to establish vertical evacuation structures in low-lying communities, offering high ground in places where none naturally exists. The agricultural economy, too, is now in sharper focus. The Willamette Valley in Oregon, the Yakima Valley in Washington, and other fertile regions are responsible for a significant portion of the nation's food supply. These areas depend on irrigation systems, electricity, and accessible transportation corridors to distribute their goods. If an earthquake fractures irrigation channels, collapses roads, or disrupts power to processing facilities, it could choke agricultural output for weeks or months. Perishable food would rot without refrigeration. Markets would run dry. The cracks beneath the subduction zone are, in this sense, not just geological. They are fractures running through the veins of supply chains and economic stability. Urban development across the Pacific Northwest will now undergo renewed scrutiny. High-rise buildings in cities like Seattle and Portland are designed with lateral swaying in mind, but most are not constructed to handle multiple minutes of sustained high-intensity ground movement, nor the possibility of simultaneous aftershocks. The red alert forces a reappraisal of these urban centers' vertical integrity. Underground transportation systems, such as Seattle's light rail tunnels or Portland's MAX lines, might experience significant deformation or collapse under seismic pressure, trapping commuters and disrupting rescue efforts. Healthcare facilities represent another dimension of vulnerability. Hospitals, especially trauma centers and emergency clinics, must not only remain operational during a quake, but must serve as critical response hubs in its aftermath. Many older hospitals still in use were built without seismic isolators or retrofits that newer facilities incorporate. Even if the structure remains intact, disruptions to water, power, or HVAC systems could render them unusable. With the red alert now active, state health departments are collaborating with emergency response teams to establish mobile medical units, reinforce building supports, and increase supply caches of medicines, surgical equipment, and blood. Educational institutions, elementary schools, colleges, universities, are also facing renewed pressure to prepare for what could be a generation-defining catastrophe. School buildings in tsunami-prone zones have become focal points in evacuation planning. Some are being restructured into dual-purpose shelters. Faculty and students are being trained not only in evacuation drills, but in basic trauma care and crisis response. The psychological strain of these preparations cannot be ignored. The awareness that a cataclysm could strike within their lifetimes, possibly within the very school day, is creating a new layer of stress among young people and educators alike. Environmental concerns also rise to the surface in light of the new seismic warning. Cascadia is home to vast forests, rivers, and marine ecosystems that could suffer long-term disruption from an earthquake and subsequent tsunami. Estuaries, which serve as nurseries for fish populations, could be poisoned by sediment displacement or industrial runoff triggered by infrastructure failures. Forested mountainsides may collapse in landslides, destroying habitats and clogging river systems. Oil terminals located in coastal zones, particularly those along the Columbia River, are especially worrisome. A rupture beneath the Cascadia Fault could rupture containment tanks, spilling crude into rivers or the ocean and causing a secondary environmental disaster. Indigenous communities along the Cascadia coast face unique risks. Many tribal lands are located near shorelines or in regions of geological significance. These communities often lack the infrastructure resilience or financial support necessary to undertake large-scale retrofitting or evacuation planning. Yet they also possess traditional knowledge systems that have recorded stories and signs of past megathrust earthquakes. The oral histories of coastal tribes, long dismissed by colonial science, are now being revisited with renewed respect, as they often align with geological records. Collaboration between tribal leaders and scientists is deepening, forging a model where ancestral wisdom complements cutting-edge technology in preparing for what's to come. The economic forecast in light of the red alert is difficult to overstate. A full-scale Cascadia rupture could result in hundreds of billions of dollars in losses. Insurers, city planners, and policymakers are now reassessing financial models based on this elevated risk. Real estate markets may respond with volatility, especially in high-risk coastal areas. Industrial operations, such as tech companies with large data centers in the region, are weighing the cost-benefit of relocating critical infrastructure away from fault-prone zones. Government subsidies for retrofitting homes and businesses are being explored as a way to soften the blow. But funding such widespread efforts remains a daunting political and logistical challenge. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on this red alert? Do you expect a major quake soon? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.